This week's Torah reading, Parsha Teruma, discusses the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which is the first sanctuary for God built by the Jewish people, in this case in the desert, in the Sinai desert, on their journey to the Promised Land. But in general, in a more general sense, the building of the Mishkan is symbolic of our efforts as people to create a sanctuary, to create dedicated space for connecting with God. And as Rabbi David Foreman of Aleph Beta put it so beautifully, put it in my own words as I understand what he said. In the vastness of infinity, God created a finite space for people so that we, whom God loves, could receive his love, so that we could exist in order to receive his love. Our work is in this infinity, in this finite space, to open up space for the infinity so that we could reciprocate God's love. And that is the Mishkan. The Mishkan is space within the finite dedicated to the infinite. And now it occurs to me as I say this that it occurs to me as I say this that the difference between the finite and the infinite is that the difference between the finite and the infinite is that the infinite has specific place. The finite has specific place. The definition of something finite is that there is a place where it is not. Whereas when it comes to the infinite, by definition, the infinite is something that is everywhere. Something is infinite. There is no place where it is not. And so as soon as we open up that door to be conscious of the infinite, as soon as we build the tabernacle, as soon as we build the Mishkan, as soon as we open up that door, we become aware of the infinite that is necessarily everywhere. So that's pretty interesting, right? As soon as you open up a Mishkan, you realize that it's everywhere. Okay, let's move on to another aspect of the first verses of this week's Parsha. The Torah says, here's the Chumash. Thank you. I got one. Parsha's Teruma, this week's reading, is Exodus 25:1, page 326 in the Sonsino Chumash. Exodus 25:1. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, v'yikhu li teruma, and take for me an offering." Holy Baal Shem Tov reads this word, and he says, "V'yikhu li teruma, take for me an offering." That's not exactly what the text says. V'yikhu, and they shall take. Li might mean for me, but it can also mean me. Teruma is translated as an offering, but it can also be translated as separate, separation. And in this way, we might read the words, "and they shall take me separately." They shall take me separately. What does that mean, take me separately? He says, Baal Shem Tov says, sometimes people go to a wedding and they talk about the menu or the decor or the color of the dress, the band. That's a wedding? That's not a wedding. The wedding is the unification of the bride and groom. That's a wedding. And so he says we have to be very careful when we go to a wedding, that we shouldn't forget what the wedding is. The wedding is not the food, it's not the tux, it's not the band, it's not the hall, it's the bride and groom. The corona reminded us of that. And the truth is, you had some couples who were different couples were confronted with different possibilities. Some couples, when the lockdown happened, they found a way. They had a big wedding planned, a beautiful wedding planned with a dress and with a band and with a caterer and a hall and everything. And she had chosen the flowers and all the pitchivkas, as they say. But the lockdown came, no more pitchivkas. Okay, so we get married in the backyard with a minyan, socially distant, wearing masks. Just 10 people. Other people said, no, postpone the wedding until we can have the wedding. Postpone the wedding until after the lockdown. So I was talking with a friend, and I said to him, postponing the wedding, that's not the right thing to do. You should get married. That's the most important thing. He said to me a very wise thing. He said, those who chose to postpone the wedding did the right thing, because they're really not ready to get married. Really not ready to get married. If they were ready to get married, they would know what the main thing is. If they're postponing the wedding, it means that they're really not getting married. They weren't ready, because the dress and the pitchivkas and the caterer and the hall are more important to them than their relationship. Now, I know that for some people, the wedding is a non-issue, meaning they're postponing the wedding because they're already living together and they're already having essentially married life. Okay. So they also shouldn't get married. They don't need to get married. That wedding is also a farce. Okay, maybe I'm choosing harsh words, but I would question deeply why what is the meaning of a wedding, of a marriage, when you have lived as married before getting married? So then what is the marriage? What is the getting married all about? It's about the dress, maybe. It's about, okay, so you want to say that it's about sanctifying the relationship. So if that's the case, then what a person is declaring is that their relationship up until now was unsanctified. So that means they have to do teshuvah before the wedding. Okay. I guess that's possible. They should repent before the wedding. I'm not judging. You know, I was also young once. Um, you know, I understand that it's hard, and the kids today are doing it this way. Um, but I still wonder what the meaning of the wedding is. If you really believe that it's necessary. Okay, I'm digressing. Um, so the Baal Shem Tov again says that we should remember what the wedding is really all about. And therefore, when we go to the wedding, we have to know to take the chas and kala separate. We have to be able to separate them from all of the other pitchivkas. To not mix the chas and kala, to not mix the bride and groom, um, and not to conflate the bride and groom with the catering. You have to be able to differentiate the main thing from all of the things that support the main thing. So the Yikhuli Teruma, take me. When you're taking me, God says, make sure that you're taking me and not mixing me up with something else. Now, that being said, the the story of the Torah is telling continues with the idea that there must be catering. We have the gold, the silver, the copper, there are all these things. But ultimately, if we remember that we're opening up a door to the infinite, then it's possible to take all of those things and that it's not conflating it. It's not mixing up the priorities, but it really is facilitating the main thing. So I don't think the Baal Shem Tov was suggesting that we should get married without catering, part of the mitzvah. But never should we forget what the main thing is. And as long as we remember what the main thing is, then we're taking God separate from everything. It's as though we're taking God without anything in the way, without any third wheel mixed in. Because truly, if we think about it properly, it's not possible for there to be a third wheel. It's not possible for there to be something else in the way between us and God. Because after all, God is everywhere. Infinity is everywhere. So the third wheel doesn't exist. All right. Then we after describing all the materials that should be made, then we go to discussing the vessels that should be created in order to build the Mishkan. And then we go into describing the curtains and the walls. So the Mishkan was built as a structure of walls with an open roof, and then draped. So it was like just walls, right? Three walls really, and And then draped over the three walls was a cloth uh, roof, cloth top. And there were several layers of cloth covering, draped over the walls. But the fascinating thing that I also saw from the Baal Shem Tov, which I think serves as the counterpoint to the take me separately idea, is chapter 26, verse 16, page 332. Ve'osiso es hakeroshim lamishkan atzei shitim omdim. Verse 16, verse 15 rather. And you shall make the boards beams for the tabernacle of acacia wood standing up. Shem Tov says the word for board or beam, a fascinating word in Hebrew. Karash. Karash means beam. And it is to stand between the ground and the ceiling. Rearranging the letters of the word karash, beam, you can either have kesher, which means connection, knot, K-N-O-T, or sheker, which means falsehood. Holy Zohar says that every individual is a karash. Every individual is a beam. With our feet on the ground and our head in the sky. Or living in the physical world and aspiring toward the infinite and the spiritual. So our job, he says, is to make a kesher, is to connect the physical, the material with the spiritual and the transcendent, to connect God with the world. If we become too identified with the material aspects of the world, then we become sheker, we become false. Now, I think this is actually a very revolutionary idea because he is not saying that our job as people is to do our best to be as spiritual as possible. The job of a beam doing its job needs to be on the ground. And it also needs to be connected to the ceiling. If it's not fully on the ground, solidly on the ground, and if it's not solidly in the ceiling, then it's not a beam. And so it's not saying be spiritual. It's saying remember that your job is to be connected with the spiritual and the physical, to have them both integrated, to be true to both of them, but with a sense of purpose of connecting them. The truth is in the connection, right? From Miklal Lav ata shomea hein, from that which it says you shall not be, you understand what is. If being entirely physical is falsehood, then being connected is truth. Kesha. Our work as people is to bring out the presence of God, to become aware of the presence of God on the earth. That we should be able to look at our physical human experience and be able to see in it a revelation and expression of the presence of God. There is no thing that we shouldn't learn from, because everything is from God. The other thing about the beam, this I didn't see in the Baal Shem Tov, but it seems very powerful, that the ceiling needs the beam more than the floor does. The floor is there, at least in our awareness, right? The floor is there. But without the floor, without the beam, you have no ceiling. On the other hand, the beam gives the floor purpose, gives it significance. Without a beam, a spot in the ground is just a spot in the ground. It's arbitrary. Once you put the beam and you have a roof over it, then it becomes special because it's connected with the ceiling above it. So it goes both ways. The bottom, the ground, the physical experience, even Reb Zusha of Anipoli learned 7 lessons from a thief. He learned how to serve God by watching a thief. So that's maybe an example of a beam, Reb Zusha serving as a beam, looking at the most lowly of human exercises and recognizing in it an opportunity to become aware of God. And so our job is to really be integrated and connected and present on all levels, and to remember that our work is to bring everything in, to tie the whole room together. And this again goes back to the idea of the infinity. Truth is everything. Truth is everything. Falsehood is only one thing, right? How do they say? There are so many different ways to tell a lie, but there's only one truth. What does that mean? Why are there so many different ways to tell a lie, but there's only one truth? There are also many half-truths. There's only one real truth. The real truth is that there's only one truth in the whole universe. There's only one truth in the whole universe. Because anytime you tell a lie, even a lie is always partially true. It's not lies that aren't even a little bit true don't exist. What's the problem with a lie is that you look at the world selectively. You look at a very small corner of the world and you pretend that that's it. And so there are infinite ways of not seeing the whole picture. There's only one whole picture, and that's everything. That's infinity. And so the world is, so that's us, that's the kesher, the connection, the knot. We are the place in which it becomes possible to realize that the things that seem opposite are really part of the same infinite. That's our work. To show that the things that seem opposite are really part of the same infinite. And once that is true, v'yikhuli teruma, when we take God, we're only taking God. There's nothing else in between because there is no others. So that's our work. Be a keresh, which means being a kesher and not sheker. And the truth is, it's all the same letters, right? A person can incorporate physicality and spirituality, material and transcendent. A person can have all of them, and it's not keresh, it's not kesher. Keresh just means that you connect between the physical and the spiritual, but it's possible to do that same connecting in a way of sheker or in a way of kesher, in a way of falsehood or in a way of connection. The same. It's meaning all the same elements are there. It's a very subtle difference of awareness. Are you really seeing it as all connected? Or do you just have all of these different things as separate elements? I think going back to the wedding analogy, it's possible for one wedding to have all the same, two weddings to have all the same catering, the same hall, the same dresses. And in one case, it is uh, separate and conflicted and, uh, and really mistaken priorities. And in the other case, it's a beautiful manifestation and facilitating of the love and the unity between the bride and groom. The difference really is in our perspective, not a material difference. It's just about how you rearrange the letters because all the letters are the same. It's just about how you arrange the letters. I want to conclude with one more observation. Chapter 25, verse 22, page 328. The Torah is describing the Ark of the Covenant, which shall contain the Torah, the testimony, the two tablets, and it is the sacred focal point of the entire sanctuary. Verse 22. So on top of the ark, if we go starting from verse 17, on top of the ark you shall make an ark cover of pure gold, and you shall make two cherubim, keruvim, of gold that shall emanate from this ark cover on the two ends. Beautifully how it writes it, how the Torah writes it. Va'aseh kruv echad mikatsa mizeh ukruv echad mikatsa mizeh. Min hakaporos tasus hakeruvim al shnei ketzosav. And you shall make one cherub at the one extreme, the extreme end, and the other cherub on the other end, on the other extreme, and they shall come from the ark cover. So it shall all be made of one piece of gold, beaten work. These cherubs shall spread out their wings upward, covering with their wings over the ark cover, so that if they're spreading out their hands, they're spreading out their wings, let's say this way, right? So they're covering over they're covering over the ark. Right? Then the faces of the two cherubs shall be one facing the other, a man facing his brother is the literal translation. Um, and then you shall put the kaporas, you shall put the ark cover on top of the ark, and you shall place the testimony into it. And here's verse 22. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the ark cover, from above the kaporas, mibein shnei hakruvim, from in between the two cherubs that are on top of the ark of the covenant, ark of the testimony. Everything that I command you regarding the children of Israel, or for the children of Israel. So God's voice comes from in between the two cherubim. And here too, again, I see this expression of this idea that God is God is seen in the in between. That's where Moses hears God's voice, is in the in between the two extremes. You need both of them. You're not asking the two cherubim to meet in the middle. One cherub stands on the far extreme on this side. The other cherub stands on the far extreme on that side, and they both reach towards the center. And in between those two comes the voice of God. And one of my favorite midrashic teachings is the story of a king who wanted to wash his crystal glasses with warm water. Too cold makes the glasses fog up. Too hot makes the glasses crack. And so he wanted warm water. Midrash says, what does he do? He takes hot water and he adds cold water. Or was it the other way around? Yeah, takes cold water and he adds hot water. Like this, you have warm water. And then he could wash his crystal. So too, say the rabbis, is our so too is our is God's creating the world with the attribute of mercy, with the attribute of strict judgment or kindness. The two conflict, strict judgment and kindness. Now, so what do you need? You need to mix them both. But what I hear in this is something actually fascinating to me. We might think of making warm water, heat up the water, but don't let it boil. That's not what the Midrash says. It says first you add cold water, then you added hot water, and then you have warm water. Right? You could heat up cold, you could take cold water and heat it up, but not let it get all the way hot. That's not good advice. Instead, he says you should partner up, be yourself, be true to who you are, and partner up with someone else who is true to who they are. Be together with them on the ark of the testimony. Cover the Torah together. And what will result in the space between you is the voice of God. So we have to have to be, so we have to recognize that infinity is not accessible in my truth, nor is it accessible in your truth. It's something that results when we each stand facing each other at the opposite ends of the arc. And then you put hot water and cold water in the same glass, and despite both of them, and because of despite each of them, and because of both of them, you now have something new called warm water. Neither of them wanted to be warm water. Each of them was being who they are. And so the irreconcilable remains unreconciled. And in that unreconciled tension comes something new, something which we would have never expected, something which we could never have heard in our own head because we never knew it before. It's the voice of God. All right, enough from me today. Have a good Tevach.
Thank you.